Next myth is that you need to feel motivated before taking action. When we were sort of preparing this, I was thinking about is it called is it The Last Dance, right? Which I'm sure everyone binged watched over on Netflix and during COVID, right? The MJ Michael Jordan
Mm.
documentary. Like I remember watching that and thinking I can run through a brick wall.
For sure.
Just the amount of motivation you get from watching some of these documentaries, reading self-help books and the although ego is the enemy and all these types of books, like they can be very useful, like great to be inspired by these things. But oftentimes we then think the feeling that we feel when we watch or read or do these things or see some cool quote or watch some motivational video is how we're going to feel all the time, right? So often we see people starting their journey with this burst of enthusiasm for the first couple of weeks, 3, 4 weeks, maybe a month, maybe two. And then they feel like that, they're meant to feel the same way the whole time. Like even think about when you set your goals for the new year. This is another point, right? Like Pete, we worked in gyms, in our formative years, and January, February was like peak, right? Because everyone's motivated, everyone's ready, everyone wants to, get rid of whatever fluff they got on over Christmas and New Year's. And they're like, new year, new me. And so there's this like sudden burst of motivation, and people think it lasts forever. When in reality, what we actually know is that that's not the case, right? There's this. I think we'll get over to it the slide after this, where we talk about the rule of thirds and how you really should feel. But why do people believe this myth, right? Motivation feels good, right? It's good to feel motivated. You have this, rush of adrenaline and dopamine and all these feel-good hormones that are encouraging you and pushing you to do something that's going to inspire change. So it's fantastic. It's great to be motivated, right? We also tend to believe it because, we remember those days that we're motivated. So we think of the days we were motivated and we think we should always be that way. But then we forget the days when we've done something well and succeeded despite not doing it or not feeling motivated, you know? So to go on to the next slide, Pete, the one with the rule of thirds, how we want to think of how we feel with regards to chasing a specific goal, your health journey, being stronger, being fitter, being like all these things is what we think is we should be 100% on it, feeling amazing. But in reality, sometimes you feel amazing. Sometimes you feel okay. You can kind of get by. Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get my workout in. I'm just doing it. And then there are other times where it's like, man, I can't be bothered. I really just cannot be bothered. And that's fine too, right? And so we always want to be mindful of these things, that these are the areas that we're often going to be one of these three. We're not always going to feel fantastic. Pete, I remember you mentioned this recently as well. I don't remember who was asking, but they were like, I don't feel so good. I don't feel so
Yes,
motivated. And I
yes,
can't
sir.
go to the gym.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like I feel like it's we feel like there's something wrong if we aren't feeling motivated or we feel demotivated or that initial burst is no longer with us. And I think a lot of the time it's just accepting that, that's okay. That is natural, that is perfectly normal. And I think because the emotions can be so strong in all of these phases, well, particularly the good sort of, phase when everything is great and you're feeling motivated, but also when you're not feeling motivated, like the emotions can be so strong, they can be so heavy, they can dictate so much behavior. And so I think just knowing that, like this rule of thirds, I think allows you to ride through those moments which are just a bit shit and then get you back to feeling better when the time comes. Because this is about everything in life, right? Same with relationships, I'm sure. A lot of time, you can't expect to be with your partner and feel amazing all the time. You're going to go through these challenges and you're going to go through these periods where it's just a bit, meh, going through the motions. But, there's learnings that can be taken with each of those.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value, I think, in doing things that you don't want to do. Because as Pete said, like some of the times we're not going to want to do things, right? So if we always chasing this, I need to feel good, I need to be motivated, therefore I will then do something, then you're never going to take action, right? We actually see that through like a lot of studies and research around behavior change, that action, precedes motivation. So once you actually want to get going first, right? Creating that consistency, the momentum, getting you get that feeling of like a snowball, like you get the snowball and going and more snow sort of piles up, or the domino effect where you start with one thing and then the dominoes start to fall. So then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. And so you really want to focus on action rather than I need to be motivated, right? And we often speak about how discipline is much greater than motivation because motivation comes in spurts, whether it's when you watch something, when you think about something, when you are just generally motivated, right? Whereas discipline is something you do when no one's watching, when you don't feel like doing it, when you have all these systems in place. When I don't remember who mentioned this, but like setting their training schedule like it's a meeting, right? That's discipline. You're not motivated all the time. But if you know that I've got my workout at 5 p.m. after work, I'm gonna go get it done, and you get it done, that's discipline. You're not necessarily always gonna feel excited to go and do your workout.
For sure. I think Abdullah's got a good point here where he's like, okay, if you're feeling shit, right, you don't go to the gym, then you have this guilt from not going. And then it's kind of this vicious cycle because that then leads you to feel even more crappy. And so, like, I think each and every one of you here has probably had many times when you do not want to go to the gym, but you go anyway. And after the session, you're like, thank God I went. I feel so much better. So, even though, like, I always sort of talk about this, like Friday morning, the alarm goes at, 5:30 in the morning. That's the only time I can run at the Corniche on the weekend. Like, the only thing that's getting me up is the thought of knowing that in 2 hours' time I could go back to bed knowing that I've done something well and I'll be happy with it, rather than hitting snooze and then living my Friday knowing that I could have done this thing and I didn't, and I'm kicking myself and I'm guilty. So that is always a good sort of frame for this, is just think about how you'll feel after you do the thing. And I'm sure each and every one of you has, again, never regretted a session.
Yeah, and one of the other advice or pieces of advice we often give people is like when you're not feeling great, you don't want to go, show up, right? Because obviously showing up is the hardest part. And then once you've gotten to the gym, say to yourself, I'm going to do the first two or the first three exercises. I think we've spoken about this before on calls. And oftentimes, after doing those two or three exercises, you feel great and you just keep going. Other times you may not feel great and you just coast and you still finish the whole session at 50%, 60%. But what you did was you went and you did something you didn't want to do, and you've essentially grown that muscle of doing things you don't want to do. And then the other times you may only just do the two or three and then leave and be done. You've done 15 minutes. But again, something's better than nothing. You've done the big bang for your buck compound lifts. So there's still a lot of benefits to doing, that workout, getting that done.
For sure. And I think sort of last point on this really is we all have these ambitious goals, and all these goals are going to stretch us. The problem is who we are at the moment is not going to get us to those goals, right? This is why we need these systems. And if you do not have any systems in place, if you do not have any routines in place or structure, then there's nothing to kind of support you getting there. Whether that is a plan, whether that is, a non-negotiable for you that every, I don't know, Sunday, Wednesday, and Thursday you go to the gym in the morning. Like, all of the systems that support you are there when you aren't motivated and when you don't feel like doing it, but you do it anyway because those are the systems that you've built to support you in this journey, and those are the things that are going to get you to your goal.